Hi, my name's Dion Flanders. My student number is 329-35141, and I am doing my presentation on autism spectrum disorder, which is also known as ASD. So essentially, autism spectrum disorder, it's a neurological and development disorder which affects children's social skills, communication, and cognitive development. People with ASD find it really difficult to read social cues, people's body language, and also understand people's tone of voice. It affects people's sensitivity to their senses. So they might find things like lighting, noise, texture, movement, other things like that can cause them quite a lot of stress. It affects children in school as children with ASD like routine. They like to stick to quite strict routines. And they can find times like recess and lunch and unstructured times really quite difficult. And it can also be very difficult for children with ASD to make friends. And they can easily become targets for bullying as well. So practices for teachers to use in the class would be visual supports, which is using pictures or other visual items to communicate with the child and vice versa for the child to communicate with the teacher and other students in their class. Visual supports could be things like photos, drawings, objects, words, or lists. Um, they're useful to ASD children because they demonstrate it's useful as ASD children demonstrate enhanced mental imagery or visual thinking. Um, so we may choose to use visual supports to assist communicating needs and helping with their frustration. For instance, if a child with ASD needs to go to the toilet and they can't communicate that properly, then they're able to just hold up a wee picture of a card of the toilet, and then obviously that's then communicating it to their peers and the other people, the teacher and that in the class. Um, Using visual supports to help communicate is going to diffuse a lot of the frustration that the child has in their inability to communicate effectively. And it also helps children to focus on specific tasks and pay attention to important details, which is also a bit of a gives them the ability to cope with changes as well. Common examples in the classroom of visual supports would be the likes of classroom timetables, where you'd have Monday, maths, English, science, SOS, etc., Tuesday, library, rah, rah, rah. So that's a really beneficial thing to have in the classroom, especially for children with ASD. But also to use individual timetables. So they would look the same as a class timetable, except would have more detail. So you'd have Monday, English, and it would have a little list or pictures of all the things that the child needs to either have ready or can expect to use within that English lesson. So the likes of a pencil, a workbook, an eraser, a ruler, etc. So providing children with ASD with timetables is really beneficial as well because it lets them know what is coming up next. So it provides them with more of a routine and a bit more structure and notice of any changes that might be in their day. The next practice would be task analysis. So task analysis is analysing a set of steps to complete towards a specific goal. So it's pretty much the process of breaking down a skill into much smaller skills. It's and having them in achievable steps catered to that child's development, to the child's development. So it'd be using things like video modeling and trial training by building each step upon itself until the task itself is complete. It's important to be consistent with the wording and the actions that you use when doing a task analysis. And it's also important to have the same method of teaching across all boards. So the parents, the way they teach it at home should be taught the same way at school. And then within school, if one teacher is teaching it one way, the science teacher or the music teacher should also be teaching it in that same way. It needs to be catered to the needs and the level of the child, their competency levels. If it's taking a bit too long for a child to develop a skill, it probably means that it's too difficult and needs to be made a bit easier for them to complete. And also providing explicit instructions for the children to follow. Again, making sure that each instruction is consistent every single time you teach it in order for that child to understand the way that that task is needed to be complete. So thank you very much.